Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful, wonderful welcome. And I've really been inspired by the previous speaker. And I think Pastor Grace obviously put us in the right order, because I think what I'm going to say follows on quite nicely from what the previous speaker has said. But first of all, I just want to give all honor and glory to God for giving me the privilege to be here. I want to especially recognize Pastor Dr. Grace for just having this vision to gather us together as women on a mission, women on a mission for Christ, but making an impact in our community, in our businesses, in our church, and in so many other areas. So what I plan to do is just to share my journey of how I got into politics, and I pray that it will inspire you to think about putting yourself forward for public office, or getting involved in your local community, or realizing any of those dreams that you have been cradling for so many years. So my journey started, I guess, when I was a teenager. So when I was at college, I went to Leighton Sixth Form College in East London. We did a module in politics, and my interest just got sparked. I don't come from a family of politicians or anything like that, so I have no links or connections into politics. But I did that module, and my interest was just sparked. And at that time, I remember getting an invitation from Tony Blair. He wasn't the Prime Minister at that time, but he was putting himself forward to be the leader of the Labour Party. And he was having this meeting with activists. And I remember receiving that invitation, but feeling so overwhelmed. I was only about 16 or 17 at the time, feeling so overwhelmed that I didn't go to that meeting. But I went on to university. And I did my first and second degrees in politics, and I started to get involved in student politics and in the National Union of Students. So at my first university, Brunel University, I got involved in the Students' Union. And when I went to do my second degree at Birkbeck College, part of the University of London, I was elected as the first Black female Vice President of the Students' Union. I then went on to be elected as the Black Students Officer for the National Union of Students. And that was really my first foray into the world of politics and navigating student politics and lobbying and petitioning and so on. At that time, I lived in Newham. I lived in Newham for 20 years. And I was quite active in the local community with various community organisations, and also with my local Labour Party. And I came to hear of an organisation called Operation Black Vote, who coincidentally this week are celebrating 25 years of being in existence. And it's led by Sir Lord Simon Woolley. And I found out about this organisation, and they were advertising an MP shadow scheme and giving people, just ordinary people like myself, an opportunity to work alongside MPs in the House of Commons. It seemed really daunting, but I thought, okay, I'll apply and see where I get. So I applied, and I was interviewed, and I was chosen, and I was again overwhelmed. And I was selected to shadow Sadiq Khan, who is now, as many of you will know, the Mayor of London. But at that time, a few moons ago, he was actually a new Member of Parliament for Tooting. And I was really blessed to have him as my mentor, because he was really just very open. I worked with him in the Houses of Commons. He took me to his constituency office in Tooting and showed me how he interacted with his constituents. He took me to all of his meetings. He was the transport minister at the time, and I remember quite clearly he was having this meeting with the chief executives of all these massive train companies in the Houses of Commons, and he's like, yeah, you're going to come with me and you're going to contribute to this meeting. And I sat there and I just felt so overwhelmed, but I tried to take in as much as I could. And I was so blessed to have him, because you know, there were a number of us on the scheme who had MPs from, you know, a whole range of political parties mentoring us, but not all of the mentors hearing from the other mentees were as engaged. So I was just really blessed. One day when I was in the House of Commons with Sadiq Khan, I bumped into Diane Abbott's PA, and naturally at that time I was very shy, so I don't know what came over me, but I just kind of said, well, I'm on this scheme, I'm on this MP shadow scheme with Operation Black Vote. I'm working with Sadiq Khan, but I'd love to shadow Diane Abbott. Many of you will know that Diane Abbott is the first Black woman who was elected to the Houses of Parliament. And she said yes, and I was again overwhelmed by this favor from God. So after finishing my internship with Sadiq Khan, I then went on to do a further internship with Diane Abbott. And that was really interesting as well, because, you know, we sat down and we had a heart-to-heart about, you know, what it was like for her as a Black woman in politics. And it wasn't easy, and it still isn't easy today. If anything, it's got probably harder with the rise of social media. But she again really allowed me to see, you know, how politics worked, and she assigned me to do her media, and so I was responsible for looking at all of the articles that were about her and collating those and reporting those to her on a weekly basis. I then moved to Dagenham because, well, it was my dad really that encouraged us to purchase a property, and Dagenham was really much cheaper than Newham at the time. So I moved to Dagenham in 2007, but I didn't know anybody there. All of my connections were in Newham, so I kind of didn't know really what to do. So I just kind of kept myself to myself. And then one day, I received a letter through my door, a hand-delivered letter. I remember this quite clearly. And it was from the local Labour Party, and they were inviting me to a meeting. So I thought, okay, I'll go along. So I went along to the meeting. It didn't help, I think, that the room was completely dark, but they were really in a bad place, because the year before, in 2006, the council had 12 British National Party, BNP, a far-right party, councillors elected to Barking and Dagenham Council. And so they were really in quite a dark place. But from that place of sorrow is always a place of opportunity. And so I started to go to more meetings. I started to get involved in their campaigning sessions. And then eventually I was asked to stand to consider putting myself forward for a councillor for the 2010 council elections in Barking and Dagenham. And I was kind of again overwhelmed, because I was thinking, can I really do this? Why would they ask me to do this? But I said, okay, let me put myself forward. If, you know, God maybe wants me to be here for a reason. So I put myself forward. It wasn't easy at times, because the British National Party could sometimes be quite hostile. They weren't hostile to necessarily me directly, but to our activists, and particularly our Black activists, they were openly hostile. So it was quite difficult. And in the ward where I stood, there were 3 councillors, and 2 of them were BNP and 1 was Labour. And at points in time, I just felt like, am I doing the right thing? Can I really beat these people? But I just prayed and I said, God, if it's your destiny, if it's your will for me to be here, then I will win. So myself and the others really spent time to get to know the local community. So it wasn't easy. We spent 3 years knocking collectively on 20,000 doors to try and get to know the local community, try and rebuild those relationships that had been broken, where perhaps people had taken relationships for granted in the past. So it wasn't easy, but it was time, really precious time that was well spent, because in investing that time in getting to know people, they began to trust us again as a Labour Party in Barking and Dagenham. And it was really important that we spent that time building up that trust. It wasn't necessarily easy, because sometimes, you know, we would get doors literally slammed in my face when I was speaking to people, but I just had to ask God to give me the strength to continue and persist. And that continued for 3 years. And my first election was 2010, so that was 11 years ago. I've been elected for 11 years now, to the glory of God. And I was elected for the first time in May 2010. And when I was elected, I was the youngest ever Black woman at that time to be elected, and the first of 3 Black women to ever be elected onto Barking and Dagenham Council. And to the glory of God, he's kept me through these 11 years. I've always managed to win my re-elections, and just to continue to serve the community. It's not easy necessarily being a councillor. There can be tough days, but it can also be really very rewarding, because you can actually get some really practical stuff done. And sometimes the messages, you get horrible messages from people, but you can get some lovely messages from people. So I was speaking to a constituent yesterday. He wasn't very happy because I was saying to him it was going to take him 2 weeks to resolve a particular issue, and he wasn't happy that he had to wait 2 weeks. But I was speaking to another constituent this week, and she sent me a message. She needed to have some repairs on her house, and her landlord was not playing ball. And I got involved with the landlord, and I got involved with the letting agency, and they've done the repairs. And she sent me a message and saying, I wasn't able to sleep because of these repairs, and now I'm able to sleep. And those are the reasons why I'm doing this, to help make people's lives better in my community and beyond. I've held a number of roles across the council. So my first sort of roles, positions of responsibility, were to be deputy chair of the personnel board, and then deputy chair of the health committee, and then I chaired the planning committee for a few years as well. And that really developed my leadership skills in terms of leading and navigating a whole group of councillors to make collective decisions for our community. I've also stood in other elections that I haven't been successful in. So I've stood to be a member of the European Parliament twice, once in 2014 and the second time in 2019. And I was really quite disappointed when I wasn't elected to the European Parliament on both occasions. But little did I know that Brexit was coming, and that could possibly be the reason why I wasn't elected. Our God knows best. But rising from that disappointment of not being elected to the European Parliament the first time in 2014, I had a number of people reach out to me and talk to me about getting involved in European politics. And I was like, you know what, I've stood for the European Parliament, I've not been elected. I don't think I want to have anything to do with European politics ever again. I had campaigned. I had been a candidate for quite a long time. I'd been a candidate in 2014 for 14 months. And you can imagine, you know, I had to go around the whole of London, because London is one constituency in the European Parliament. I had to go to all the 32 boroughs in London. It was tiring. And so after that, I was like, I don't want anything to do with the European Parliament again. But somebody, one of the former members of the European Parliament, said, you know what, Sanchia, don't write off European politics just yet. Don't write it off. There is this committee, this government committee, that I think you'd be really good to sit on. And so he sent me the application form. I filled it in, and then I got a message that I had been appointed to the European Union Committee of the Regions, and that they had to send my nomination to the Prime Minister, who at that time was David Cameron. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know what I was turning down. But glory be to God, David Cameron approved the nomination, and I served on that committee for 5 years. So I was between London and between Brussels. Those of you on my Facebook would have seen I was between London and Brussels for the last 5 years. And in 2017, I was elected as the first Black deputy leader of the UK delegation. And again, that was just an awesome opportunity, because I got to talk about my political challenges, but hear about political challenges from mayors and from councillors all across Europe, and that was really good for my learning and for my personal development. So how do I cope with all these responsibilities? Because like many of you, I multitask. I'm a politician. I sit on the board of a charity called Endometriosis UK, which is a condition that I have. I'm a school governor for a primary school in Dagenham, and I'm also the head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at London South Bank University. So how do I cope with all of these roles? Well, the first thing is the prayers, and it was said in the chat earlier, I rise up early every morning and cry out to God to direct my steps. But the prayers of my parents, of my families, of my communities have just been amazing. And when I was chosen by my colleagues, by my councillor colleagues in 2018 to be the civic mayor, which was an absolute honour, and I served as the civic mayor of the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham from May 2018 to May 2019, I had a whole band of women, my chaplain, Pastor WOM Hassan from the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Rivers of Joy, gathered a group of women to pray for me every single week. And I was just honored by that. And I felt the power of those prayers because being in a position like the mayor is people just see you kind of driving up, being driven around in sofa-driven cars and all those things. But there are challenges behind the scenes. And those prayers really kept me going and gave me the wisdom and strength to navigate through a role that I had absolutely no experience of doing and no knowledge of before. So the prayers of myself and my family and my community have really held me and continue to hold me. And so pray for your politicians. And I pray for the politicians in government, even though the politicians leading the government are not from my party. I pray because the Bible exhorts us to do that. The Bible exhorts us to do that, and it is for our good because we want them to make decisions that will favor us. Aside from that, my husband, Ibinabo Victor Alasia, has been an awesome support and help to me, and I thank God for him. I thank God for my family. I thank God for my friends, many of who are on the call today, who just hold me up in their prayers and just encourage me. And you know, those people that you can talk to when you're really feeling down and you don't know who to talk to. And it's always essential that you have those people that you can reach out to and speak to. But for me, it's really been about impacting my community. And that's why I was really touched by what the former speaker has said. You can impact your community in so many different ways. You can put yourself forward for public office. You can just become a community activist like the former speaker is. But I would encourage you to get involved in your community. There's a saying that I have that, you know, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So if you're on the menu, you need to be at the table to influence those decision-making roles. Become a school governor, particularly if you have a child. Become a school governor of your child's school. I'm a school governor. I've been a school governor for 11 years now. And the decisions that we as governors make are really quite important around the curriculum, around policy and practice. So get involved. Think of sitting on a board. As I said, I'm on the board. I'm a non-executive director on the board of a charity. Think of how you could use your services in a charity or in a board and help them to develop their mission and grow. And since I've been on the board of Endometriosis UK over the last year, their growth, not just down to me, but obviously all the board members, has just grown exponentially. Where other charities are kind of been struggling during the pandemic, they have soared. And I give God the glory for that. Think about how you can help the homeless, and our sister there was outlining that quite well. Think of how you can help in your church and serve in your church. And I really thank God for Royal Connections, because I know they are a church that reach out into their local community. And I would encourage all the pastors, or the ministers on the call. Yes, we need to minister, and that's really important, but we need to minister beyond the walls, whether it's the physical walls or the virtual walls of our church. So, and one thing that the pandemic has done, which has really been good, it's shone a light on the churches, and particularly in Barking and Dagenham. Since the beginning of the first lockdown in March last year, we have seen the churches band together to reach out, to provide those food banks, to provide that counselling, to provide that sanctuary. And the council, you know, holds churches in a much higher regard now and sees them as partners. So I would encourage our churches to partner with your councils, partner with your community and voluntary organizations, and be a beacon to those out there who do not know God, and let them see God through you. I've been blessed, and I don't want to take too much time because I want to allow time for question, but I've been blessed with the many roles that I have. I also have my own business, I have my own consultancy as well. And I just give God thanks that even in the midst of the pandemic, He's allowed me to reach out to my community, to make an impact, to be recognized and honored. Last year, towards the end of the last year, I had 3 awards. I was awarded Politician of the Year. I was awarded Public Servant of the Year as well, even in the midst of a pandemic. And that just goes to show that, yes, it's been a challenging, I think, 18 months for us all, but God can still use you during a time of crisis, during a time of pandemic. I found a new job. I was promoted during the pandemic as well. So I know it's been tough and I know it's been challenging, but also see it as an opportunity for God to use you. Open your heart and ask Him, where do you want me to be? And allow Him to lead you. And I know that He will take you to higher heights and deeper depths through His grace and love. So thank you for listening. I want to make sure we stick to time, so I'm going to end it there, and I would welcome any questions that you have for me. Thank you once again for having me.
Wow. Thank you so much, Counsellor Alasia. Thank you so much. So inspiring. Thank you. We've got quite a number of questions for you. But before I go into it, I don't know, for those that have been following and not multitasking, doing other things, there are a number of things that are common within our first speaker and counsellor. First one, prayers. Both mentioned prayers, the importance of prayers. You cannot go wrong with prayers because God is the only one that can meet your needs and knows your needs before you even ask. Another thing common between the two speakers is passion. You have to be passionate. Go for what you have passion for, you know, regardless of the negativity, regardless of what the community is saying. As long as you have that passion, you believe in what you want, you go for it. Another thing is determination. There will be reasons why you want to pull back. You know, the counselor could have said, because I'm Black, I will not go for it. You know, she could have been shy, but she went for it. She was determined. So was our first speaker as well. Determination, even when her friends were not supporting you, the determination pushed you forward. Another thing is the support from family support. You know, your family would always be your biggest chair leaders. So supporting one another. The community of church is also your family. So again, the support. So I will take some questions for you now, Counsellor, if you're ready. So the first question is the political party Christian Alliance exclusively for Christians?
Okay, so there are a number of various political parties in the UK. So CPA, I don't know much about their mission, aims and values, because obviously I'm not a member of that party, but I would imagine it would be so. So I would encourage that person to look onto their website and find out more about their mission, aims and values. But what I would say is that the major political parties, so certainly the Labour Party, which I'm a member of, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats, all have Christian wings. So in the Labour Party, there is a Christian wing called the Christian Socialist Movement. And so all of us as Christians in the Labour Party, we gather together once a month and we have prayer breakfasts. And then we also have seminars in the evenings, and they run a mentoring scheme for Christians that want to get involved in politics. And I know that the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats for sure have Christian wings. And then there is a non-denominational Christian wing called Christians in Parliament as well, and they have regular prayer breakfasts and sessions as well. So I would encourage that person to go onto the relevant websites and look up the information, and obviously take a decision for themselves of what political party they would like to join.
Awesome, thank you. What opportunities, the second question, what opportunities are currently available for Christian women who aspire to join politics? Also, do those mentors or coaches still exist?
I think there's lots of opportunities. I think all of the political parties are looking to increase the diversity of their elected representatives, and Black women particularly fall into that. And not just Black women, I think, you know, Black women or Black women like myself who have disabilities, who have health conditions, they're really looking for people that represent their local community. So they want to widen the opportunities there. And all of the major political parties, again, have mentoring schemes. So I know certainly in the Labour Party, we have mentoring schemes for women that want to be involved in politics. We have mentoring schemes for Black and Asian people that want to get involved in politics. Numerous schemes are available. And this is a prime time because so many events have happened over the last year that have heightened people's awareness to the importance of diversity. You know, the murder of George Floyd, the pandemic, and the disproportionate impact that it has had on Black and Asian communities. So all of the political parties are looking to increase their diversity. I was just reading an article, I think it was this week, about schemes for Black and Asian people wanting to get into politics. So absolutely, this is the time to put yourself forward. This is the opportune time and the doors are open. So step in.
Lovely. We'll take two more questions. Thank you. How much allowance does a counsellor receive? Can one function? Okay, there's a second part to that question.
Sure.
Can one function alongside a full-time job or business?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I've always worked while being elected. So certainly the allowance that you would get would not be equivalent to a full-time job. I know many people think it is, but it isn't. It is an allowance rather than a salary. The allowance varies across different local authorities. So there isn't like a standard allowance that everybody gets as a councillor. Each borough sets it differently, I would say, but it's all public information again. So if you go onto the local authority that's relevant to you and look under council and democracy, you will see the allowances that the councillors are paid. So if you go onto the Barking and Dagenham Council website, for example, you will see the allowance that myself and all the councillors are paid. So it's all open and it's all transparent. So I've always worked while being a councillor. I've worked part-time in the past, but now I'm working full-time. And it's a challenge, but I think as long as you prioritise, you should be fine. I mean, most of the meetings are in the evening. So obviously, if you do a 9 to 5, most of our meetings start at 6 or 7 o'clock. And because of the pandemic, I would say it's even got a bit easier, because prior to the pandemic, all of our meetings were physical. So we had to go to the town hall for all of our meetings. But with the pandemic, obviously, all of our meetings were online. And now that things are opening up again, we're kind of having a hybrid approach where some of our meetings are online and some of our meetings are at the town hall. And obviously with online meetings, it makes it a lot easier for people with health issues, for people that have care responsibilities to get involved, because obviously you can log into the meeting and participate from the comfort of your own home. So yes, it's doable. Many of our councillors work alongside being elected, and it's perfectly possible. As long as you prioritise and you've got a supportive and understanding family, you can do it.
Thank you for clarifying. The last question, with the lockdown easing off, will counsellors now be holding open surgeries in their constituencies? If so, any plans for them to work safely?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, prior to the lockdown in March, all of my surgeries were physical. So I was blessed, and goes back to the church, that I had two churches in my ward who opened their doors to me to allow me to have, and the other counsellors in my ward, to have our surgeries there. But obviously, since March last year, all of our communication is online. At the moment, you know, things are opening up, but people are in different places because, you know, not everybody has been vaccinated. Some people have got, you know, long-term health conditions where they're not that comfortable to be necessarily meeting people face to face yet. So at the moment, we are not going to be having our surgeries face to face at the moment, but it's something that we will keep under review. But counsellors are very accessible. If you go on, if you just Google your counsellor's name, you will find their email, you will find their phone number. So it's very easy to get hold of counsellors. You can send an email and you can call, and we will deal with your query or concern. So the fact that we are not having face-to-face surgeries does not hinder our constituents and our residents getting in touch with us. So you're still able to get in touch even without the surgeries. We don't have a date yet for face-to-face surgeries, but that will be kept under review.